Welcome to our session. Mike and I will try to make it truly exciting, as exciting as the introduction. Let's get started. I will start and kind of share with you a couple of insights and what's driving the topic, and then Mike will take over and introduce you to the SAP Data Hub. It's a very exciting topic for us here. So what's driving the data explosion? And you're already the masters of the structured data. You have the structured data in your ERP systems. They've been growing over years, but there are two new dimensions. And you might remember Bill's keynote from Tuesday when he was talking about the X data, right? This is the data coming from from the social media, from the email systems, right? And this is a new type of data coming into the enterprise. And Bill also talked about the O data, right? The outside technology data coming from the sensors, from your manufacturing floors or retail store floors, right? Or it might be oil drilling platforms, right? So from the IoT devices. So these are new types of data, and these are new volumes of data, right? Volumes we haven't seen in the enterprise before, right? When we look at those numbers, they're really scary, right? So the data is one thing, and now while we have all this data, this is our new goal, so to say, right? The enterprise treasure, so to say, for us moving forward. This data now calls for new ways of processing it, right? And that's where the advanced analytics and artificial intelligence are coming from, right? Because these are those new technologies, new ways which will allow us to process this data and make it valuable to the enterprise, to our business users, right? And obviously, with all new things coming, there are challenges, right? And there are new use cases, right? There are new skills which will be required, right? To make those things happen. There's new culture, right? But probably the most important thing is the kind of a paradigm shift how we will compute the data. And Garrett Katzmaier, when he was on the stage together with Hasso yesterday, he talked about it, that with this new data, the way how is it collected, where is it collected, and the volumes, we won't be able to bring this data to one central location like we used to. Right? It won't be one single location. What we will do is we will take the compute to where the data is collected. So we will be taking compute to outside of the data center, to the edge, for example. We'll be taking compute to the cloud, right? Wherever the data is, right? So a very important aspect of this. And obviously there are a lot of new business use cases coming with this new data and new capabilities of processing the data. And here are just a couple of examples across of selected industry verticals, like in financial services, fraud detection, ID verification, in government, cybersecurity, right? Energy, seismic, in retail, right? Tim Cook was presenting a very interesting device on the first day when he was a guest with Bill, right? And this is all the new type of data, artificial intelligence combined with advanced analytics. So I'm not going to kind of spend time on all of these, but you see all of the, practically speaking, all of the industry verticals represented here. And then finally, maybe one comment and kind of an example, if we look at the use case between the edge and the core, and what does it mean for us? So at the edge, if this is a manufacturing floor, or is it a retail store floor, or it is maybe an oil drilling platform, right? Or even an autonomous car, we have sensors collecting huge volumes of data. Only subset of this data is meaningful for the business, right? So what we need to do is we need to take compute to where the data is collected, right? And run machine learning, right? Run artificial intelligence, and understand the value of the data collected and then either act upon it right away if this is the use case, or send that information to the core or to the cloud. So at this point I'm going to stop and ask Mike to introduce us to Data Hub, because there's something we desperately need to enable those use cases. And this is how Data Hub is coming into the play.
Yep. Thank you, Peter. Okay, so we're going to talk here a little bit about how SAP looked at these challenges and how do we build these new types of applications. And as Peter, very well covered, is that there's a different model that we need to look at. We need to step back, and I think it was covered in a number of our keynotes, about how do we build this data backbone that we're going to innovate from and enable IoT, enable the new data sources, the enterprise sources that Peter talked about, but the whole new unstructured data, the open source stores, the cloud, we're going to say cloud solutions, whether enterprise applications like Concur, SuccessFactors, or using cheap storage in clouds. And how do you bring that together to a data flow that also is integrated with the enterprise? So for us, it was really looking at the, if you want to say, the zoo that we have of systems and the different types of processing we have. So we've been very clever monkeys at generating lots of data and lots of processes for doing it. However, we haven't done it necessarily in a way that is very agile. If you want to say, it's not a very microservice target architecture. We tend to do things very point solutions. So we build something for a data mart, a very specific line of business data mart. But we're not really switching it to being what we would typically call a data economy. So everybody has the cliches of data's new gold, new oil. But how do you have it that the developers that are building this, whether it's a data source, whether it's a transform, whether it's a way of doing data capture, where it's a video processing algorithm that you can use across your landscape. I would say the other part is, it's also, you have existing data flows, but everybody seems to go and create their own new ones. Data scientists are very good at this. They just say, give us all the things in files and then we will build a new process. But how do you say, I want to be able to take this from my ERP system, I want to take these from the MDG systems. I have these data flows and already got some transforms, I've already got anonymizing functions, and then they say, give me those from a nice a la carte menu of data, and then build my new process, and then deploy it back into those existing data flows. How do you do that at scale? I mean, Peter covered the edge type concept, where it's like you're going to have every single device maybe making its own decisions that needs data from many different sources. One is coming real time into the device, but it's going to need additional information from the enterprise systems to be able to make those decisions. Whether it's master data, whether it's conditions that it needs to be pushed in from your configurations, or it's from your data scientists that go to the edge device. So that's where we see a lot of IoT, a lot of machine learning, and how do we actually not go back into lots of localized, say feeds and things like that, where you start seeing ETL, ELT, data cataloging, and we look at buying lots of individual tools that don't integrate to each other, and we actually put the integration tax back on ourselves. So if you want to say this is probably everybody's landscape is some sort of variety of this, we're definitely not saying that you shouldn't do local development and pick tools, but they should be able to interact with each other. Because we really want to build a data process that is underpinning the business process. And business processes don't stop and end inside an application anymore. We're going to make decisions based on flows of data. We're going to add more context from data that comes inside our enterprise, but also comes from outside, that we acquire. We have from suppliers, we have coming from devices. Other companies are offering services to us, and we have to bring those in together and add those nuances together to make better decisions. So use cases, I don't have to spend a lot of time because of Peter here on this, but basically what we see is business application transformation. So this is where we see a lot of customers are going to S4. And why they're going to S4 is to do transformations to their business. They want to do innovations around that. A lot of things are changing in their landscape. I mean, data warehousing, a lot of data marts coming back into the HANA-based S4 systems and C4 systems. So that changes all the interfaces, and then the flows of data, you're going back to standard. But now I want to do things like machine learning, I want to do advanced analytics, I want to now integrate new services, whether you say, okay, now I want to take some cloud solutions and bring those together. So that is really changing that landscape underneath. And I would say the second part of business transformation is that IT is also changing its landscape. So it's moving away from dedicated servers to things like Kubernetes, to use containers, so we can have a more utility to compute model. And that's really where we're working with HPE on, is that we actually have Kubernetes, we have the infrastructure to be able to support that we can have dynamic workloads. kind of joke, it's back to the mainframe again. It's time sharing. How do we reuse these resources more efficiently? Because no one wants to just have servers sitting there waiting for a workload and they do one thing once a day. So that's really where we see that IT part as well. Then we see the IT part, the IoT part in orchestration is how do we actually operate, because we're not going to have people just looking at dashboards, making decisions on every piece of data that comes from IoT devices. This is going to come in streaming, it's going to come through brokers. We need to be able to join this with our HANA data, with our business application data, and make decisions very rapidly. Make a decision, is it something that's very important? Do I need to change that valve setting? Do I need to reschedule my transportation because I have a failure in a robot in my warehouse? And call business functions. So it's not just saying I need to do feeds, which is just load from one file or read one thing, transform it, and put it thing. We want to be able to make decisions on data in flight. We also want to bring data together in the right place. What's in these come into HANA system, we also use the HANA capabilities and orchestrate the process to say, now I put all this data here, now run the algorithm there. So it's not about also pulling all the data out of the systems, it's also coordinating what happens at the systems. Data warehousing, that's kind of one we kind of alluded to as well here. This is about how we have the data landscape, whether it's data marts inside our transactional applications, the enterprise data warehouses, the data lakes, the object stores. This is going to be a stretch, and we're going to have things where low value data might be in object stores until you want to be the high value, but you want to be able to discover it. You want to know what transforms have been done on it. So I can go in a menu and say, oh, I'll take this one, not the raw data, and I won't have to redo that. I'll use the functions that somebody already did, and I'll build something new. And then finally, we've already kind of covered the machine learning part, which is how do we get the right data to data scientists, so how they don't spend 80% of the time preparing and acquiring data, rebuilding metadata, things like this. They spend, and why they spend instead 80% of the time building new models and training them. And then the final part is why a lot of machine learning projects fail to get out of POC. They do great POCs. How do you operationalize those? How do you put them into data flows and say, I want to generate and not have to rewrite them all? Because that's usually what happens is they build a great process, but this is not compatible with any of the flows of data they already have. So how do you bring them and put them back into HANA system, or put them back and look at data in flight and look at the data feeds and connect them? So that's kind of where we're looking and taking a big step back and trying to consolidate it. So the step back is that we're looking at all the integration, the different replication technologies we have. We still will have ETL, we'll still have streaming, we'll still have replication. The analogy I like to use here is that they're like public transportation, the trains, maybe ETL, then you have buses, then you have taxis, then you have Ubers, you have scooter rental, you have new things like Hyperloop. It's going to want to be connected in and reuse those capabilities. It's not about saying everything should go in Hyperloop. There's still going to be need for trains. And you still will use trains to build solutions. But if you want to build a new school and new things, you're going to have to connect them. And that's really about us, is about how do we use those technologies that you already have, whether it's BW process chains, whether it's SDI, whether it's data services, whether it's Kafka, and connect those and reuse them. I'd say then we're building pipelines. Pipelines, just view them as flow graphs of data, so flows of what we're going to across the systems. We're not replacing what's on each one of the systems. We're really orchestrating what goes on between them, and then what happens when things like data goes into HANA, what we want to run in there. And then the results, what we do from there. Because, as I said, it's always not just going to come into HANA, not into an ERP system, that's the only thing. Because business processes don't respect those ERP, this is HANA, they actually will tend to go across many different data stores. And then the orchestration, how do you do this at scale? How do you really build these processes? And then across on top of that, it's all metadata driven. What is the data you have? What's the different operations you're doing on the data? And how you build those. And that's really then we start getting the governance and you start looking at it, and of course using APIs, you all know about metadata, but then how do you do the compliance and understand what data is where, what actually actions took in the data? It's all metadata driven. So for us, we've spent a lot of time of doing existing integrations with HANA, with our cloud applications, which you heard a lot about with Christian Klein talking about intelligent enterprise, but we want to be able to connect into non-SAP applications. We want to be able to use existing workflows, whether it's BW process chains, HANA SDI flow graphs. And then we also want to be able to connect to ABAP systems and use the ABAP code that you've already built. This is very much the enterprise side. We also then work a lot on the other connectors of how we connect to other systems, whether it's streaming IoT devices, whether it's cloud storages, whether it's machine learning applications, whether it's cloud analytics like Analytics Cloud, or if you want to send data to Google BigQuery, that could be part of your solution. How do you agilely do that? You could be complementing your BW solution or using the new cloud data warehouse solution. Then databases, public clouds, third-party APIs. So if you're using other API technology like MuleSoft, how can you reuse that and keep that and orchestrate that as part of the process? And the bottom right really is also about how what Christian talked about is the API hubs from SAP, from our partners that are publishing, anything you're building custom that we can use these services and then build these new type of applications. And then I'd say finally is also about how do we create the semantics with the metadata across all the objects you have in your landscape and then be able to orchestrate across them. And that's really, if you want to say the beauty of Data Hub is to be that microservice architecture and use the resources that you already have and be mostly provided here by HPE. And then we build these data flow applications. Okay. So I'm back to Peter.
Okay. Maybe just one more slide to show you how we work together to make solutions available for you. So we take SAP Data Hub, and I'm using here that IoT scenario. You remember that edge to core scenario, which I presented at the beginning, and then we map, practically speaking, those different very important components of your our extended enterprise edge to core, right? And see how they can be enabled through through Data Hub. And you see that the Data Hub enables that entire flow, right, edge to core. And then practically speaking, then you can see also how you can then deploy this solution across edge to core, or running on different types of compute systems, starting with the compute systems at the edge, then compute systems for advanced analytics, right? Your SAP HANA, right, and so on and so forth. So this is just kind of a quick summary of how this could work and work together. But as you probably realize, Data Hub is that secret sauce for bringing everything together, right?